protracted Boko conflict. He's also been assuring of expedited processes for codification of succession lines to help reduce chieftaincy disputes across the country. We're live to Parliament, where the Minister designate for States in charge of local government and decentralization, the Honorable Obiamwa, is on his own facing the appointment committee today. Details of these stories and a lot more if you stay with us for the next 30 minutes. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. It's streaming live on Facebook, the handle 3FM927, on Twitter as well, the handle 3FM927, and as well as on YouTube. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta, glad that you could be a part of us. Let's begin. Accra High Court has dismissed contempt charges brought against Northern MP Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, ruling that the legislator was not served with any contempt procedure as was suggested. The charges were brought against the Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa by Secretary of the Board of Trustees of the National Cathedral Project, Kwabna Edu Jimfi, alias Victor Kusi, asking the court to bar the MP from using his name and disclosing personal details about him. But the court today noted that records available before it does not suggest that the MP was served. Lord Idwasare is my colleague there. He joins us on phone with some more. So, Lord, briefly walk us through the reasoning of the court and what the court says that the MP was not served with the right processes.
Right. So, Marina, the presiding judge, Charles Jimfi Dankwa, told lawyers for Kwabna Edu Jimfi, otherwise known as Reverend Kusi Boateng, that they had not served the Northern MP appropriately, and this was because essentially they're saying that the legal steps didn't take place, because as a member of parliament they should have gone through the right proceedings. You know, if an MP needs to be served, needs to go through the House or serve him personally. Now, lawyers for Reverend Kusi Boateng told the court that although they had not served him, Mr. Ablakwa had responded via the social media, and so by the fact that he had responded to the contempt meant that he had one way or the other received them, so they had to go ahead with it. And then lawyer for Mr. Ablakwa, the person of Sadio, told him that he got the document after he requested from his lawyers, and that they weren't properly served. And so as far as we're concerned, they didn't have any documents suggesting that they had been served with a charge of contempt using the right means. They had to make their own arrangements to get it. And so, listening to both arguments from both parties, the presiding judge ruled that essentially the right procedure did not take place, and so they had not been served with any contempt procedure. And the court has also not received any order for any such process, and so he essentially adjourned it and died, so the right procedure took place. After the entire proceeding, some leadership of the NDP, essentially Mr. Ablakwa was led by the leader of the party, and the person of Titi Kwete, right, and some others, and we spoke to them. Let's hear them out.
Indicate that the NDC as a party, from the national to the region to North Town, is fully behind our comrade Honorable Samuel. To say that the party is not defeated at all, that there's nothing that the forces that are against the truth can do to discourage him or to make him feel that what he's doing is not the right thing. We believe the cause he's fighting is the cause of truth, the cause of transparency, and there's nothing that can be done to discourage him. And the party stands fully 100% behind, and that's why we are here to show exactly.
So that's the General Secretary of the NDC, Fifi Kwete. The questions about the substantive case and what happens going forward were raised. The Honorable Roxy Nelson Dapiamekpo, who's South Dye MP, was present in court. What did he tell you when you asked him about the substantive case?
Well, essentially, they're still on that matter. Now, interestingly, Reverend Kwesi Boateng himself was absent, and so that was something that the Honorable Roxy Dapiamekpo also touched on, the fact that someone who is bringing the case was himself absent, that the substantive case is yet to be heard, and so it's something they're all preparing and gearing towards.
Yes, what transpired was that in court, when you hear of a court matter that concerns you, you can waive your right of service and answer the issue. But the judge is of the opinion that because the constitutional right to be served properly through the Speaker in Parliament, given the status of the respondent in this matter, the Honorable Kudetua Blakwa. So the matter has been adjourned sine die for the applicants to put their house in order. By putting their house in order, the court has directed them to do the appropriate thing by having him served as constitutionally provided through the Speaker of Parliament. When that is done, then the processes that we have elected to file as a matter of consequence, we can rely on it or file further processes as a result of the proper service. But until that is done, there's no matter.
So that's South Dye MP Roxy Nelson Dapiamekpo speaking there. The Deputy Majority Leader as well, Ama Kofi Boa, was present in court, and he, amongst many things, asked of the whereabouts of Reverend Kwesi Boateng.
We should have seen Mr. Adujemfi in court, but instead, you know who was in court? The man who was fighting for the right thing for Ghana, Okujetua Blakwa. And that is why you are all here. That is why you see all the crowd here. The people of Ghana are committed and support all the right things he's fighting for. The minority in Parliament stands strongly behind him. And we want to make it clear. Today we went to court, it was obvious that the people who took us to court are running away from their own application. And this is really victory for the people of Ghana. What it is that we are very clear in our mind. We are going to stand by Okujetua and fight for the right thing for the people of Ghana.
That's Deputy Minority Leader Ama Kofi Boa speaking there. Earlier, you heard me interact with court correspondent Lord Edouard Sare, who provided details as to exactly what transpired in court for us. We'll move away from this and bring you a lot more details as and when they do come through. But Minister Designate for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Stephen Asamoah Boateng, says that government would explore all avenues, including engaging National House of Chiefs to help resolve the protracted Boko conflict. According to Mr. Asamoah Boateng, the conflict has retarded development in the area, hence the need to quickly find an amicable solution to the crisis. The Boko conflict has claimed several lives and displaced thousands of residents as the Mamprusis and Kusasis engage in violent confrontations over the Boko skin. Well, appearing before the Appointments Committee on Monday, Stephen Asamoah Boateng said he would engage influential traditional and religious leaders, including the National Chief Imam, to resolve the conflict.
Well, I would call on any stakeholder who can support and help bring peace to the area. Not just that area. We have other areas. So there's our win one, if you probably our Onyankpala one. It's a bit of brewing in some other areas. So all stakeholders should be consulted. I have a ministry that have a network, both Christian community and the traditional and the Muslims. So we would talk. I mean, I know Chief Imam's house. I go there often. I know Arumi is like a brother to me. I go to the Chief's Palace often. So it's a question of collaboration, making sure we work as a team and let them understand that we are a sovereign nation. We don't have anywhere to go but Ghana. And the development.
So that's the minister designate for chieftaincy. Now he says that the failure to properly codify succession lines for stools and skins is partly to blame for the many chieftaincy disputes in the country, and that he would support current efforts to complete the codification process.
Organization, we had a system, and the system must be improved, and we will revert to some of them and make sure it works for all of us. It's the embodiment of our life, and I would work closely with the traditional authorities. Things are documented properly, so people don't circumvent it. There are areas where people circumvent because they are not even lineage to the family or the line, but they find a way. And how a chief is validly nominated and stood or skinned and installed must be properly put together. And I think the National House of Chiefs would play a key role. That's their job. My job is to facilitate and move. Organization, we had a system, and the system must be improved, and we will revert to some of them and make sure it works for all of us. It's the embodiment of our life, and I would work closely with the traditional authorities.
That's the minister designate for chieftaincy and religious affairs, Stephen Asamoah Boateng. We just hear from security analyst Dr. Adam Bona was calling for some intervention to deal with the current situation in Boko. And listeners, you'd recall that there was an attempted arrest of the Nairi, and it appears that the misunderstanding has crossed carpets to the northeast region as well. Here is what Dr. Adam Bona had to say.
My recommendation is that if the President of the Republic is listening, he should appoint one of them to be in charge of specifically the conflict in Boko. But at the moment, it looks like that we don't have coordination. We don't have who is directing who. So at one point, you see military officers being called to respond. At one point, we are not sure whether it is the police. We are not sure whether national security.
Absolutely.
So when you have all these splinter groups trying to act, taking directives from different people, what happens is that you have all this chaos and mess we are seeing. And the next 48 hours in that area and parts of this country, we just have to be on the alert because, anybody, if you are seen to be supporting one or if you are not careful, you could be attacked.
That's security analyst Dr. Adam Bona. We will take you to Parliament shortly, where the vetting is continuing for the minister designates. But let's do the story, because 10 out of 13 alleged national security operatives arrested on Friday, February 17, have been moved from military custody into police custody. One of them, an immigration officer, is reported to have been referred to the national headquarters for interrogation. Reports also revealed 2 army officers remain in military custody, and the suspects are expected to face a court on Wednesday. They were picked up in relation to some swoops they were carrying out in part of the Ashanti region. Colleague there, William Evansinkum, who's also our bureau chief, is joining us with some more details. So Evans, what is informing the relocation of these individuals who've been arrested?
So over the weekend, screening, was done because they needed to separate the real military, officers from other civilian guys. In the pictures, we saw about 13 of them wearing military uniforms. So they needed to do a thorough screening so they would know who are the real military guys. So that was done over the weekend. And yesterday, we heard from an inside source that 10 of the men have been transferred to Konongo Divisional Police Command. That particular command holds the original jurisdiction because they arrested the guys. So on Wednesday, we understand they will be processed for court. 2 other guys who were identified as military men are still with the military, and that is, they are still being kept in the military custody. We do not know what is going to happen to them going forward because there hasn't been any official statement from the police and also any communication from the military, leadership. We are only getting feed from inside source And that is what we know for now. One person, of course, you mentioned earlier, who happens to be an immigration officer, has been referred to the national headquarters for further interrogation. So on Wednesday, we are going to see 10 of the men alleged to be national security officers face the court for the very first time.
Right, Stan Evans, and we'll come to you tomorrow for details of that. That's my colleague William Evans providing details for us there. And I mentioned we'll be taking you to Parliament. We'll do that pretty shortly, but some news as well that should interest a lot of you, and that's 30% of staff of the National Labour Commission. They've resigned, some of them stating that they did so because they received salaries as low as 720 cedis a month. The resignation has impacted on the work of the Commission, which has thus decided to charge fees from complainant to appear before it in order to generate revenue. Chairman of the Labour Commission, Justice Esuminyedu, revealed this during a courtesy call on the Minister of Employment, Labour Relations and Pensions in Accra. He emphasized that the Commission has resolved to charge fees from complainants who appear before them. Here is what he's been saying.
The lack of proper conditions of service for the staff of the Secretariat is another major challenge. Our information is that in the last 2 years, the Secretariat of the Commission has recorded high staff turnover, with over 30% of the staff resigning from the service of the Commission due to poor conditions of service. The Commission's legal department has only 1 staff, and though there's clearance to recruit 3 legal officers, due to the salary level and poor conditions of service, the vacancies cannot be filled. And this is very surprising.
Well, however, the Minister of Employment, Labour Relations and Pensions, Ignatius Bafuwa, asked the Commission to seek parliamentary approval for the fees being charged.
I agree with you, because ultimately all these issues will end up at committing the state in the form of a charge on the consolidated account, and that's where we have a little bit of challenge, because it is only the finance minister who by extension has been given powers by Parliament to cause a charge on the consolidated account. Seriously, I will want to engage my colleague, the finance minister, on that. But I would love it if the executive secretary can give me a paper on the financial situation, so that at least I will be able to make very informed position to the finance minister.
That's the Minister of Employment and Labour Relations and Pensions, Ignatius Bafuwa. Let's take you to Parliament now, where the Minister Designate for State in charge of local government decentralization and rural development is taking his turn at the Appointments Committee.
Reach some of these things, and probably that's how it was picked, or that's how it came out. I would not make that flat, categorical statement when that is not so. I have very good friends who have excelled in their various fields, not necessarily holding 92.7. My major point is the work of an MP is sometimes very intellectual. People sit outside, they have the impression that, maybe I had a shock of my life when a policeman said he didn't know MPs go to work. So we get up and we roam in the constituency. This is a place of work. And so people should have an idea of the kind of work we do here. And that if you come here, you'll be saddled with so much intellectual work that you should be prepared for it. That's the kind of thing that I want to put across, not to just write off any group of people.
Thank you very much. What is the relationship between your ministry currently and the Ministry of Water Resource and Sanitation, Water and Sanitation, in terms of managing waste in the city?
The Honorable Minister for Water Resources and Sanitation appeared before us last week to answer questions, and in the supplementary questions, this issue came up. She says
3FM,
the ministry
92.7.
is more concerned with policy, but when it comes to implementation, she cannot do away with the assemblies because that is where the situation is. And that's how we try to coexist. Policy level, they get to a certain level, but when it comes to implementation, you expect that our ministry will be involved because it is at a local level.
Thank you very much. Would you say it will be better for that ministry to be sent back to Works and Housing and then allow you to run the city as the public expects?
Mr. Chairman, he's asking me whether the press conference or the statement they issued yesterday, whether I agree with it. I don't agree with it.
Chairman, I have a concern about this matter. Mr. Chairman, the honorable nominee is before us. He's been asked a question. The question has nothing to do with the NDC's press conference. And he's making reference to a press conference that is not before us. Mr. Chairman, we take strong objection to that. He should know that he's before us. You are not here to bully us. And we are here to, as a colleague, you are here. Please, just answer the question.
Mr. Chairman,
don't bring the NDC in.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, if the leader feels bullied, I'm sorry. I never intended to bully anybody here. What I'm saying is that the suggestion has been made. You want to talk?
3FM 92.7.
This is your objection to his answer, but I disagree with you because he can relate to what is already in public and says that the question is asking him to agree with their stance as contained in the press conference, but he doesn't agree with it. I think it's a fair question.
Okay.
Well, that is his assessment.
Okay. Honorable Obi Amwa, with a very experienced minister in the person of our senior sitting to your right-hand side, 3 of you being his deputies, also capable, will you say that your elevation, not because you are not qualified, yes, in fact, you could be any substantive minister in any ministry, and I agree. Will you say that your elevation has nothing to do with bringing efficiency to that ministry and therefore should not be approved?
With all due respect, I don't agree with you.
I'm happy you said that the management of waste in the city should, and that is what the public believes should be under the Ministry of Local Government, and I agree with you. If you turn to page 85 of the same audit report on COVID expenditure, the state is reported to have spent
92.7
5 million Ghana cedis on an item they call removal of plastic waste and other foreign material debris from storm drains in selected areas in Accra. Is it your considered view that the Ministry of Water Resources, Water and Sanitation, actually have a better understanding of which drains needed to be cleared to the extent that they spent 5 million Ghana cedis of COVID money to remove, as they call it, plastic waste in storm drains across the city?
I don't really get your question.
I'm asking that I agreed with you when you said the management of waste and other things in the city. Indeed, when parts of Adaklu get dirty, citizens of Adaklu expect my honorable DC to be responsible for getting that cleared up through various means. And I agree with you when you answered by saying that Water Resources work closely with you. this expenditure of 5 million Ghana cedi, I would have understood it better if you told me, or if it was recorded that La Dadeko Tupon or an assembly, a collection of them spend this money. Then it will be difficult, it will be easier to trace. I'm saying, since it is just captured as an item under water resources and sanitation, will you say that this expenditure would have been better explained if it was expended under your ministry?
I still don't understand your situation.
Let me try. And he's saying that under the budget, is that right?
Under the audit report.
Audit report of COVID-19, there is a report that Ministry of Water Resources has spent 5 million cedis to clean up a drain. And in his view, such cleanup ought to have been done by the assembly. Would you agree with that? Or let's say this expenditure should have been done by an assembly and not by the Minister of Resources to clean storm drain.
Unfortunately, I looked at the report, but I didn't look at that session, probably because it was water and sanitation. But it depends on the circumstances. I cannot sit here and just pass judgment because the water and sanitation has been cited for using money at a place. I cannot sit here and do that.
92.7.
It will require more interrogation before I can conclude on this matter.
Let me make it even better. On that table, there are 5 items. Let me give you examples. Emergency cleanup exercise in the Greater Accra metropolitan area, 2.9 million Ghana cedi. Emergency cleanup exercise in Greater Kumasi metropolitan area. Then the one I mentioned about that one, Zoom Lion Ghana Limited. The second one, Zoom Lion Ghana Limited, 2.7 million. The third, in 14 regional capitals, Zoom Lion Limited, 5.6 million Ghana cedi. Removal of plastic waste and other foreign material debris from storm drains in selected areas in Accra, 5 million Ghana cedi flat. The last and the fifth one, contract for procurement of dust bins, Duraplas Limited, 1.7 million. All these are things I know.
So you're coming back.
Activities under the Ministry of Local Government.
You are coming back to your point that sanitation ministry should have been part of local government ministry. And that if it is spent that money, then we should rather have spent the money. But it's not our remit. It's their ministry and they know how to spend their money. And if the Auditor General has a problem with it, they have to answer. It's not for me to sit here and say that money should have come to us. Why have they spent it? I can't do that.
So when there's a litter overflow or rubbish on the street of any city within Ghana now, whose responsibility is it to clean up? Is it local government ministry or sanitation ministry?
Well, it depends on the assembly. There's an assembly under the local government ministry. And if they are mandated to clean it, they have to clean it. But if sanitation has any resources and want to spend in such situations, I cannot sit here and say that it should have come to us.
Actually, it was not their resources. It was COVID money. It was a health emergency.
But it was listed under them.
Are you aware of how the sanitation fund approved by this House, how much has been accrued so far, and what major expenditure lines have been taken care of so far?
Well, I know the sanitation fund is under the Ministry of Finance. And then the Ministry of Finance has a say in how it's disbursed. I don't know the figure as I sit here.
That's the Honorable Obi Amwa, currently before the Appointments Committee. That's how we end this afternoon's edition of the Bulletin here on 3FM 92.7. Dela Michelle is here with the very latest from the world of business. Dela, what do you have?
Well, thank you so much, Mawuena. Let's get into our major stories for this afternoon. Our headlines coming up. Former Finance Minister speaks against the growth and sustainability level. We will tell you, or sustainability level, we will tell you about his concerns. Also, over 90% of the the new bonds are held by institutional investors. Telecel Group, the new owners of Vodafone Ghana, have pledged to maintain their brand's 3 existing subsidiaries following the successful transfer of Vodafone's 70% of shares. We have the details of these stories and many others coming shortly. My name is Della Michelle. Thank you for your company this afternoon. Let's now settle for the details. We begin with government as it has concluded the settlement for the new bonds issued after the debt exchange program. 3 business sources say a statement will be issued shortly on the details of the settlement. Our sources have, however, suggested that a total value of bonds tendered amounted to 87.7 billion cedis. About 92.5% of the value of the new bonds are held by institutional investors. This means that the individual bondholders and collective investment schemes constitute only about 7.5% of the value of the new bonds. Individual bondholders below 59 years and collective investment schemes which are jointly captured as Category A bondholders will have their principals paid in 2 installments of 50% each in 2027 and 2028. The total value of the Category A bondholders is a little over 6 billion cedis. Pensioner bondholders who constitute Category B will also have their principals paid equally in 2027 and 2028. Their total value is just about 448 million cedis. About 80.5 billion cedis of the new bonds are held by institutional investors. But let's still stay on the bonds. As we've mentioned, the government will begin to issue its new bonds to investors that participated in the domestic debt exchange program today. Market watchers, however, hopeful the uncertainty caused by the debt exchange will be over once the settlement is done as scheduled. But even before that, they want government to put in place measures that will ensure the fiscal challenges that caused investors to lose part of their investment do not recur. Courage Buti is a lead researcher with GCB Capital.
For anyone investing, what you want is predictability. What you want is economic stability. What you want is coherent macroeconomic policies that do not jeopardize your investments. We are in a time now where beyond debt structuring, once the IMF program starts, reforms cutting across revenue mobilization, cutting across debt management and all of that. What I would want to see going forward would be what policies are we putting in place to entrench the gains we make from all of these reforms. Like we have done debt restructuring. The target is to get to 55% of GDP by 2028. And if care is not taken, you can go on that spending spree again or decisions that are suboptimal. And before long, you come back to this conversation. Normally in 2-3 years' time, you come back to this conversation again. But if we learn from those examples and entrench irreversibility through the policies we put out, for instance, capping debt to GDP at a certain number, capping nominal debt stock at a certain number, and expenditure beyond a certain threshold should only be financed by revenue mobilization rather than borrowing. If we put those in place to make our government, whoever is in government, work for the project and programs and policies they want to roll out, then it brings certainty and predictability to our economic management. And that is all investors want to make decisions.
And you heard Courage Buti, who is a lead researcher with GCB Capital, who wants government to put in place measures that will ensure that fiscal challenges that cause investors to lose part of their investment do not occur as they pay the bonds. But let's still stay with government, this time around looking at the former Finance Minister, Seth Terkper, who says the Growth and Sustainability Levy before Parliament will place more burden on businesses and could undermine productivity. Mr. Terkper admonished the government to be cautious even as it seeks to shore up revenue to support the economy or risk worsening the plight of the industry. He spoke to 3 Business.
The levies, traditionally, we use them, whenever the economy has a crisis, and then we introduce them and we have sunset clauses which make them lapse I do not see any sunset clause attached to the bill. It only adds to a large number of, levies that are in the system already. It will increase costs, obviously, because what we are talking about is an indirect tax. And unlike an income tax, which falls on the person, who is paying the tax or charging the tax. In the case of VAT, levies, excise duty, import duty, and the rest, the tax is passed on and added to price. Any new tax that we are introducing is only increasing the burden of the tax.
Former Finance Minister said Tepe. Away from that, Executive Director of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, Dr. Charles Nyaba, has expressed optimism about the Member of Parliament for Abetifi, Brian Champon, who has been nominated as the Minister for Food and Agriculture. According to him, the vetting being the first public hearing of the nominated minister was full of hope for farmers. Although he says expectations are moderate, the association is prepared to engage the minister more on the major policies he outlined during his vetting.
You don't really need a technocrat in the sector to become your minister. You need an administrator, you need somebody who is open up to engage, you need somebody who will be able to manage people, you need somebody who listens to beneficiary communities. So if he is coming up with an open mind to engage farmers, to listen to our inputs, to take advice from technocrats in the ministry, I think he'll go far. But we need to also be a bit moderate in our expectations because the budget has already been read. He will have little to actually do for 2023. The budget cannot be changed. We are looking at 2024. My only fear is that come 2024, which is election year, government priority might not be on increasing infrastructure development. So he might have a good idea, he may put up a good proposal for consideration. But if it's not government priority, we might not be able to address that. In the short run, we still need to be full secured and areas that we have potential, but we are not yet producing to those potential. We put in investment to ensure that we increase our yields and increase our supply.
You have the voice of the Executive Director of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, Dr. Charles Nyaba. To our very final story this afternoon, Telecel Group, the new owners of Vodafone Ghana, have pledged to maintain the brand's 3 existing subsidiaries following the successful transfer of Vodafone's 70% shares. In a newly released statement by Telecel, it said operations of Vodafone Ghana and its 3 subsidiaries, National Communication Backbone Company Limited, that is the Vodafone Wholesale, the Vodafone Ghana Mobile Financial Services Limited, that is Vodafone Cash, and the Vodafone Ghana Foundation will continue operations uninterrupted while embracing exciting new possibilities. Vodafone Group PLC completed the transfer of its shares after successfully obtaining all the necessary regulatory approvals, including the agreement of the Government of Ghana as a minority shareholder. That's all the business news we have for you this afternoon. Log on to 3news.com for more business news. Before we go, government has concluded the settlement for the new bonds issued after the debt exchange program. Details of that story and many others are again on 3news.com. My name is Della Michelle. Black Rasta standing by to continue with Urban